One unfortunate trend in this modern world is that a lot of people stop watching matches and they watch highlights. Now, the problem with watching highlights of tennis is that while you might be entertained by watching spectacular shots, you will learn absolutely nothing about a specific player. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when you're talking about players who are playing on TV, elite level players, they pretty much all play the same. In other words, they know how to do everything. They have a big serve, they have incredible forehands and backhands, they might even have great volleys, they're great movers, and it's very difficult to pinpoint what the difference is between each individual player. Of course, some players will have strengths in certain parts of the game. For example, some will have a huge serve while others will be very consistent from the baseline, no doubt about that. But generally speaking, these players are of a very similar playing level. So when you're watching highlights, you're seeing winners, and this is something that any high-level player can do. Even if you go to a futures tournament, you're going to see the exact same type of winners. So the question is, what makes the players that are playing on TV different from those players who are not playing on TV? And the difference lies in a very subtle thing, which is how the best players play in the most important stages of the match. Now, you might not necessarily learn anything by watching, for example, Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic play incredibly well in the most important stages of the match, because their games obviously are individual. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, I'm just going to copy what Federer is doing in the most important stages of a match and this is going to work for me. No, it's not going to work like that. Tennis is more complex than that. But I'm going to tell you one example that applies to me. I'm 6'5", my serve is my best shot, and my favorite player back in the day was Pete Sampras. And I would study Pete Sampras' serve placement and what type of serve he was hitting when he was down break point. And what I noticed, which was later confirmed in interviews that I listened to from Sampras, that he always went for the ace. And this is quite contrary to what a lot of coaches teach, which is to place the serve and go for a percentage shot, because when you go for an ace, the likelihood of missing is very high, and you most likely would have to go through a second serve, and you might get broken. So it makes a lot of sense to go for a percentage serve. But Sampras did it the opposite way. He went for an ace, and this is something that I copied. Now, because my serve is my best shot and I have a lot of confidence in this shot, I was able to improve by studying Sampras, because I was able to save a lot of break points by going for the ace. The more I did this, the better I got at it. Now, would I have ever learned about this by watching highlights? No, because if I saw Sampras' aces in a highlight reel, they're completely out of context. So I'm sure you get my point. It is how the best players play when the score is at its most important, is what distinguishes them from other players. Now, I made an entire course on tennis tactics on my website, intuitivetennis.com, and there's a whole chapter on scoreline tactics, how you as a recreational player should play certain scorelines in the game of tennis, because people often overlook the fact that tennis is a game after all. The scoring difference makes tennis unique in a way that it builds pressures in us. It makes us feel uncomfortable when the score is a certain way, and our game is going to reflect that. So there are certain things that you need to do when the score is a certain way in order to perform at your best. Unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly how you should play under a certain scoreline, because like I already said, every player has their own individual strengths and weaknesses. Like I said, in my case, I'm a big server, and I'm going to use my serve as an advantage in most important stages of the match. This doesn't mean that this is the right thing to do, for example, on break point down, for another player who doesn't live and die off his serve. So you understand what I'm saying. I cannot give you specific tactics for the scoreline because I don't know how you play. Every player has their individual strengths and weaknesses. But know this, you have to play important scores in a match with the right mental attitude. That I can tell you. And these score lines are going to be 30 all, deuce, add in, add out, 30-40, 40-30, love 40, 40 love. These are important score lines that cannot be overlooked. You have to play with the right mental attitude. And what is that? where you have to play with a lot of intensity, and you have to tell yourself that you're going to try really hard on that particular point. See, let me just give you the example of 40 love. That is one of the most common traps that a lot of players fall into, especially at the recreational level or at the junior level. So what happens is when you're up 40 love, you think you have the game won. And now all of a sudden you relax mentally. You might not play that point at 40 love with a lot of intensity, you end up losing it. Now it's 40-15. All of a sudden, you lose this point and it's 40-30 and the game is extremely tight. So it went from you thinking that you won the game easily to all of a sudden a super tight pressure moment at 40-30. So what you gotta tell yourself is that when you're 40 love up, it's just as if it was 40-30. You have to trick yourself. You have to ignore the fact that you're up by a lot. And what's gonna happen in turn is that you will rarely lose games when you're up 40 love, where if you're not aware of this mental trap, there's gonna be a lot of games where you're up 40 love and you end up losing as a result of relaxation. I made a video a couple of years ago where I told you to stop watching highlights, but I didn't really go into as much depth as I did today, why I think that watching highlights is not a good thing. It will not teach you about the subtleties of tennis. It will not show you the true quality of a player. And I recently listened to an interview with Ivan Ljubicic, one of the greats, number 3 in the world, the coach of Roger Federer. It was on the Functional Tennis podcast. And Ivan was asked the question, what is the difference between some of the greats, the Grand Slam champions, and somebody like you who was very close to them, but yet there was a difference, right? So we're talking about maybe the big 3 versus everybody else. And Ljubicic brought up the example of Guga. And he said that when he played Guga, he had a very easy time holding serve. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that is, because in my mind, Guga has a phenomenal return. But in any case, Ljubicic also had one of the greatest serves on tour, maybe of all time. And he had an easy time holding serve against Guga. But when the score got tight, for example, 5-all, 30-all, out of nowhere, Guga would start hitting down the line backhand winners. And Ljubicic explains that therein lies the difference between the great players and the greatest players. The greatest players of all time manage to find their absolute best game in the most important moments. And what I can tell you, that this is not something that you're gonna ever be able to pick up when you watch highlights. And what you should do instead is commit some time and watch a full match. Another problem that you're gonna run into by watching highlights is that you're gonna think that tennis is all about winners, and you're not gonna see the errors, because even at the elite level, there's a lot of errors that are committed. And you can sometimes see when a player is playing phenomenally well, and all of a sudden it gets close in a score and that player starts to play poorly. And now all of a sudden you have an insight into this player's psyche, and this could maybe explain why this particular player is struggling at the elite level. Maybe there's a confidence issue. Again, you will never be able to find this out if you watch highlights, because it's going to be one winner after the other. So I'm telling you that you're going to gain a lot by watching full matches. Yes, I know in this modern world everything is short, we have a short attention span, but tennis cannot live with a short attention span. It requires patience when you play. You're not going to win the match quickly, you have to be patient. And if you want to learn something by watching tennis, it requires patience as well. So for that reason, stop watching highlights.